Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She stood in front of me like a scene from a movie she'd rehearsed too many times. I just need to know you still want this. I need to see you fight for me. That was the moment something in me stopped. She said it with all the emotion of a script. Like it was noble. Like she was giving me a final chance. But the truth? She didn't want a partner. She wanted a contestant. I didn't answer. I just looked at her and saw everything I'd been avoiding. The long months of cold glances. The affection withheld like a prize. The guilt-tripping masked as emotional honesty. And suddenly, I was tired. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just done. She wanted proof I still loved her? Funny. I'd been proving it in silence for a year. Paying the bills. Carrying the weight. Absorbing every eye roll. Every, you just don't get it. Every night she rolled over with her back to me. But I wasn't going to audition for affection. So I said nothing. And that silence? It hit harder than any speech I could have made. She blinked, like she couldn't believe I didn't bite. Then she shook her head and walked off, slamming the door like she'd won something. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't call anyone. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall like it was answering questions for me. Was I supposed to fight for someone who only wanted to be chosen when it benefited her? Was I supposed to prove my worth to someone who never had to prove hers? No. That was the night I changed direction, not with rage, not with drama, but with a quiet, surgical shift. I opened my notes app. Title, Exit Strategy. And I started writing. I wasn't planning how to leave her. I was planning how to leave the version of me who kept chasing her approval. She thought this was the part of the story where I'd rise to the challenge, apologize, beg. But I'd already spent years fighting. And now? Now I was done swinging at air. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee, asked if I wanted eggs, threw in a comment about maybe taking a weekend trip together to reset, she said. Like the night before was just a test. Like my silence was temporary. She thought I was pausing. I was already packing. Not physically. That would come later. For now, I was removing myself emotionally, piece by silent piece. I stopped asking about her day. Stopped reaching for her hand. Stopped trying to close a gap that she had spent years widening. And the strangest part? She didn't even notice at first. Because that's what happens when someone believes you'll never leave. They stop watching for signs that you already have. She kept up the performance. Date night she used to cancel. Affection she used to ration. Compliments that suddenly sounded rehearsed, not real. And I played along. Not out of hope. Out of strategy. Because if I was going to walk away clean, I needed the moment to be final. No confusion. No chance of return. So I kept the smile. I answered the questions. But I never gave her my full attention. I gave her what she gave me for years, enough to think everything was fine, but never enough to touch the truth. At night, I lay beside her with my eyes open while she slept. And I realized I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the man I had to become just to keep us functioning. The one who swallowed his needs. Who walked on eggshells. Who gave more than he had, just to earn crumbs of closeness. She once told me, "You're too quiet when you're upset." She had no idea how loud my silence really was. I started rerouting parts of my paycheck into a separate account. Updated the beneficiary on my life insurance. Spoke with a friend who worked in property law. She thought we were reconnecting. But the truth was simple. She was reapplying for a position that no longer existed. Because I had already resigned. She just hadn't read the memo yet. A few days later, she picked a fight over something small, some forgotten errand, a bill I'd already paid, a text she thought I ignored. But it wasn't about that. It never was. She needed heat, conflict, emotion, proof that I still cared enough to get angry. I gave her none. Just a calm reply. Noted. I'll fix it. She blinked, like that disappointed her more than any insult could have. She tried again. Louder this time. Asked if I even loved her anymore. If I was just checking out. I looked at her, not like a man caught in guilt, but like a man reading a familiar book with a different ending. I'm doing my part, I said. And that was true. I was doing my part to finish this. I started canceling subscriptions she never even knew I paid for. The gym membership she never used. The streaming platforms only she watched. I closed the joint savings. Quietly. Legally. She didn't notice, not right away. Because comfort had made her careless. At dinner, she suddenly became sweet. Told me she'd been thinking about the early days. That maybe we needed to reconnect. I nodded. Maybe. She smiled, thinking it landed. But I wasn't agreeing. I was deflecting. Because she wanted emotional labor, the kind she never did herself. And I wasn't in the business of building bridges for someone who kept burning them for leverage. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. Packed a small duffel bag. Just essentials. She asked, half asleep, "Where you going?" "Just the gym," I said. "Might stop by the office after." She nodded and rolled over. She didn't ask why I had my passport in that bag, or my old external drive, or why the folder marked legal was missing from the desk drawer. Because she wasn't paying attention. She only noticed disruption, not the quiet organization of an exit. And by the time she did, she'd realize I hadn't disappeared overnight. I'd just been leaving slowly, the way she taught me. Not in rage. In silence. She started noticing the shift, not all at once, but in fragments. The first crack came when I missed dinner without texting. She called. I didn't answer. I wasn't doing anything suspicious. Just walking alone, watching the streetlights flicker on across a city I'd forgotten I loved. When I got home, she was waiting. "You could have said something," she snapped. "I didn't think it mattered," I said. That answer? It cut sharper than anything I could have yelled. The next day, she tried something else. She wore that red sweater I once said made her look like fire. She made coffee, my favorite blend. She asked how I slept. I gave her polite answers. Neutral. Non-committal. And I watched her smile falter, not because I was rude, but because I was indifferent. See, what no one tells you is that detachment doesn't arrive with fanfare. It drips in, slow and steady, like water wearing down stone. And she was starting to feel the erosion. Later that week, she brought up therapy. "Maybe we should talk to someone," she said, pretending she hadn't brushed off the same idea a year ago with a laugh and a roll of her eyes. I nodded. "Sure. If it helps you. Not us. You." Because there was no us anymore. There was only a woman realizing the echo chamber she built had gone silent. I spent more time out of the house. Gym. Long drives. Sitting in parks with a book I didn't open, just watching people move, free, detached, unburdened. I craved that. And I was getting closer every day. One night, she asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I looked at her steady, calm. "No. But I'm seeing myself again." "That's new." She didn't reply. Because deep down, she understood. I wasn't replacing her. I was recovering from her. She thought the fight was still happening. But I'd already left the ring. And now, she was swinging at air. One evening, she broke. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just a quiet collapse in the middle of a conversation she thought she was still leading. She was talking something about how we used to laugh more, how things felt different, how we could maybe go away together, reset things. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish the entire monologue. Then I said, "You don't miss me. You miss the version of me who made you the center of everything." She went still. Because that wasn't cruelty. It was truth. And truth doesn't need to be shouted to sting. She tried again. "I just want us to get back to what we were." "What we were," I said slowly, "was me overreaching and you underdelivering." She looked down. No comeback. No spark. And in that moment, I saw it. Not guilt. Not love. Fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the comfort I provided. The backup plan. The quiet man who paid the bills, said yes to everything, and waited for breadcrumbs. I used to be that man. Not anymore. That night, I moved into the guest room. No warning. No explanation. Just did it. She didn't say a word, but I heard her crying through the wall. Short. Quiet. Like someone who hadn't practiced how to be on the losing side. The next morning, she made breakfast. Set 2 plates. Waited. I took my coffee in a thermos and left early. Not to punish her. Just to protect my peace. She sent a message an hour later. "I don't know who you are anymore." I read it 3 times. And then I smiled. Because I knew exactly who I was now. I was the man who didn't beg. Didn't plead. Didn't chase someone who had years to choose me and never did. And the difference between silence and surrender? Silence moves in straight lines. It doesn't circle back. She once called me cold for shutting down during fights. But now, she was learning the difference between cold and clear. One is a phase. The other is permanent. After that night, things got quiet. Not peaceful. Just muted. She stopped pushing. "No more. We need to talk." No more sudden affection. She moved through the house like someone avoiding aftershocks, waiting for the next emotional quake. But I wasn't erupting. I was exiting. She thought the silence meant we were rebuilding. What she didn't realize was, I had already started removing bricks. I changed my direct deposit. Split my paycheck between two accounts, one she didn't know existed. Called the insurance company, made changes to the beneficiaries, the emergency contacts. All subtle, all legal, all final. At home, I smiled more. Not because we were better, but because I was free. Freedom doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes, it just looks like a man making eggs at 6 a.m. and not caring who's still asleep. She started trying again. Subtly, she'd brush against me in the kitchen, ask how work was going, leave her phone face up. But it was all too late. Because when a man stops fighting for something, that energy doesn't disappear, it gets rerouted. And mine had found a new direction, me. One Thursday night, she asked if I wanted to go out. Just us. A dinner. A reset. I said sure. She lit up. Thought she'd cracked the code. Thought I was warming up. But in reality, that was the night I dropped off the first envelope at my lawyer's office. I still went to dinner. Played the part. Held the door. Paid the bill. She smiled across the table like we were back. But I wasn't there anymore. I was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, legally, logistically, this wasn't a marriage. It was a phase-out. She laughed at something I said that night and touched my hand. I didn't flinch, but I didn't feel it either. Because you can't spark what's already been extinguished. She once accused me of being passive. No, I was patient. And now, that patience was paying off in the most surgical way possible. The next week, she changed tactics again. Outfits she hadn't worn in years. That old playlist she used to dance to when things were good between us. A sudden interest in our memories. Photos pulled out of nowhere. Anniversary posts recycled like proof of something still alive. But I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for momentum. She started texting during the day, little things. Thinking about you. Want to grab lunch? Remember this? I replied, but only with facts. No warmth. No bait. She thought it was working. Thought the cracks were sealing. But really, they were widening from her side. One night, she sat next to me on the couch. Closer than usual. I feel like we're finding our rhythm again, she said, eyes hopeful. I nodded. Feels that way. She leaned her head on my shoulder like we were back in chapter 1. I didn't move. But inside, I was counting the days. That same night, I reviewed the final version of the paperwork. Everything was ready. Clean. Irrefutable. A financial breakdown, documented detachment, signed statements. No drama. Just truth. She had no clue. Because I wasn't giving her what she expected. Explosions. And without that, she assumed control was still in her hands. But it wasn't. Control had changed hands the moment I stopped explaining myself. She noticed it, too, eventually. She started asking more questions. Where were you last night? You're working late again? Why are you always in your notes app? Each time, I gave her a version of the truth. Just not the one that mattered. Because what she didn't understand was, I wasn't cheating. I wasn't running. I was preparing for a life without her interruptions. She once said, if you ever left, I'd feel it before I saw it. She was right. And now, she was starting to feel it. It happened on a Monday. She was getting ready for work, humming to herself in the mirror. Light makeup, subtle perfume, like she was playing the role of someone still in love, still loved. I waited until she left the house. Then I executed everything. The lawyer filed the documents. My new lease was already signed. The movers came. Efficient. Quiet. No wasted time. By the time she'd return, the guest room would be empty. The closet halved. The keys she carried? Irrelevant. I didn't leave a letter. No emotional manifesto. No, we need to talk moment. Just a clean apartment. An absence. I sent her a message as the final box slid into the trunk. You once asked me to fight for you. But I realized I was the only one fighting. Blocked the thread. Deleted her number. Freedom doesn't always come with flames. Sometimes, it comes with nothing left to say. That evening, I sat on the floor of my new place, mattress on the ground, a lamp, and silence. It felt like oxygen. Around 8 p.m., the call started. Unrecognized numbers. Voicemails I didn't check. A text from a mutual friend. She's losing it. What happened? I didn't answer. Because people confuse closure with explanation. But I owed her neither. She had years of small moments where she could have chosen us. And I had stayed through every cold night, every sideways comment, every silent punishment. But I wasn't interested in rebuilding a house that only I maintained. Around midnight, I saw her car pull into the old driveway, security cam notification. She stood outside the door, bag still in hand, like someone returning from vacation. Only this time, the locks didn't turn. The lights didn't come on. Just silence. Final. Unbending. Clear. She pounded the door once. Then again. And then nothing. The feed went still. And in that stillness, I felt it. Closure. Not because she gave it, but because I finally stopped needing it from her. The next morning, I woke up to 14 messages. Some angry. Some pleading. Some nostalgic. One just said, "How could you do this without saying goodbye?" I didn't reply, because that was the goodbye, and it was the cleanest one I could give. A few hours later, a message from her sister. "She's staying with me. Looks like you made your point." But this wasn't a point. It was a boundary, the one I should have drawn years ago. I didn't need her to understand. I just needed to stop explaining. I went for a long walk that day. No destination. Just steps and silence. Past a coffee shop we used to visit. Once, maybe twice, back when we were still in sync. I didn't stop. Because nostalgia is a liar. It filters out the cold nights, the disinterest, the constant emotional negotiations. I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. That afternoon, she sent one last message. "You're really not going to say anything? After everything?" I stared at it for a while. Then I archived it. Not deleted. Not answered. Just placed where it could no longer reach me. She used to say I avoided hard conversations. That I shut down when things got uncomfortable. But the truth is, I spent years trying to talk to someone who only listened when it was convenient. Now, she wanted words. But all I had left was action. And I'd already taken it. A week passed. A mutual friend told me she took time off work. Moved in temporarily with family. Said she was figuring things out. I didn't ask what that meant. Because I already knew. She was facing a version of herself that no longer had me to blame. And maybe for the first time, the silence around her wasn't mine. It was her own reflection, staring back without sympathy. 3 weeks later, I saw her again. Grocery store. Sunday afternoon. Ordinary setting for something so final. She looked smaller. Not physically. Just less rehearsed. No makeup. Hoodie. Hair tied back. A version of her I hadn't seen since the early years, before the filters, before the calculation. She froze when she saw me. I didn't. I nodded politely. She stepped forward. "I didn't think I'd run into you here," she said, as if the city wasn't ours just as much as it had once been mine alone. I shrugged. "I come here sometimes." She gave a nervous laugh. "You look good." I nodded again. "I feel good." She paused, searching my face for any trace of invitation. "You really just walked away?" she said quietly. "I didn't walk," I replied. I stopped standing still. That landed. Her lips parted like she had something else to say, maybe something practiced, but it never came out. I let the silence sit between us. No rescue. No softening. She finally asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I met her eyes. Calm. Clear. "I'm seeing myself. And I like who I found." She smiled small, sad, real. "I thought you'd always wait." "That was the problem," I said. And then I turned, grabbed my card, and walked toward the checkout. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just forward. No final look. No secret hope. Just peace. Because healing isn't loud. It's not explosive. It's quiet mornings. Uninterrupted thoughts. It's laughing without scanning the room for who's watching. It's building a life so whole that you forget what it meant to feel half. She once demanded I fight for her love. I did. For years. But in the end, I realized something she never could. Real love doesn't need to be earned with suffering. So I stopped fighting. In the moment I did, I won. She asked if I'd moved on. But you don't move on from people who were only holding you back. You move forward. Been through it? When they crossed a line and you made sure they felt it.